Yeah, we're recording.
Hi.
Jessica,
Yeah?
I'm a cop now. I got a body cam. Stop reaching for my gun.
Stop it. I can go to the football hotel. Very kids to be
Fort?
Willie and Henry, yeah.
Look at all the towels. Oh, they're using the Foot Lookout as a towel holder. I'm getting real sacrilegious about that. Sacrilegious. We got about 15 minutes now. You think what? People walking. Campbell, do you see the people walking? Coming at 2 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 11 o'clock. All those people in suits. Oh no, that's the dinner cruise.
Oh, people like that.
We got time.
Babe, no, we don't. I need to take pictures.
We got time. I took the hill. I did something that the natives couldn't do. I took the hill. You going down? Okay. Oh wow. Imagine you take the hill, right? You get up here and there's a giant cannon waiting for you. It's like, I did all that work, really? So let me get a drink of water, man. They had water pouches. Oh my god, that cannon's pointed at me.
Stop.
You got 4 cannons pointed at you. Yeah. Well, I'd say that was the First World War. I'd say Genghis Khan's conquest across all of the world.
Alright, no, stay out here.
It's not outside. It's inside. I told you that you do. Robert.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh my god, it's M&M. Mom, spaghetti. Look at the bottom of the tank.
Except for this big one here.
What's the tank?
I don't know what the tank guard is.
Neither. Oh, it's right here. There's one right here.
They see something. Oh, that's cool.
Put it back. Parker, put it back.
That is cool.
Spaghetti.
Put it back. All right, come on. We'll just go outside.
What is this for here? Is it this for?
The flare. Not from the light. That's something else.
There's a soldier right here. He's looking at me.
Oh, there is the drop figure.
Right, we'll be in the front.
Oh, look. This is silhouette.
I like the little miniature things in the front.
That's cool.
But I don't see anything in there. There's nothing wrong.
What?
What about the bullets?
That's not that much, but you should get something.
That's scary.
Which one?
When you see it. Yeah.
What do you make him? These are pens at the ghost tour.
Ooh.
And look, this is the movie we're trying to watch.
Ooh.
I'm not gonna get it though.
Alright, so you don't have space for that one, but you can make space for this one. It's about as big as you are.
Is it this way? Am I doing it right? I'm not doing it right.
That goes into your chest there. Because the recoil, but more straight. And feel it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because these things shoot black powder. Or gunpowder, right? So you cock, load, aim, and then see how it's right to my... Oops, that's my camera there. Chest. Yeah.
I actually
Love you. Look at this. These are the old caps. So you put that in there.
And then you make the sound, or do you?
Yeah, it goes.
Oh, God, Eagle, 50% off. Oh, there's a chest right here.
Ooh.
You okay?
Ooh. Oh, it's a waterproof bag.
Oh. And also, you can you splash like alcohol into a brush.
Oh my God. Jessica. When you had just about enough of that fly, shoot it. Instead of swatting it, you shoot it. Oh, Jessica. It's that Japanese girl's thing. The cooking set.
Oh, from YouTube. I was confused.
Your mind like, what Japanese girl does he know? I love you.
I do want to, so I might get this one. Call him Captain.
Oh, this is not a bouncy ball.
He almost bounces?
That is not a bouncy ball.
I think because it's a mom and it's the same one. It's a
Hey, you know what? You right. ¿Cuántos pesos?
29.95.
Muchos pesos. Ah, teddy bear's locked and loaded. Oh, we gotta check in.
So,
Cool.
they'll bring you around the museum to solicitation share a little bit of history
What is it under?
Jessica?
One adult and one student?
Yeah.
Okay. And what's your home zip code?
11520.
So I got you checked in, and the guides are gonna call you right from here, as a group.
Cool.
And they put pictures for you up there.
Thank you.
It's in my bag.
Oh, wow. That guy's so big.
His name is Bruce.
They're kind of a lot. This dude in 1952 said, I'm gonna go look around here.
Yeah.
And in 1953, they made him the curator of the museum.
I was looking at him.
Like-
Looking at pipe.
It's like, oh, go be a museum curator. What?
I don't know this, but I think someone dropped the cars here.
These things happen. I mean, trying to be generous, but mess up. Drop my key card in there. I need that.
You can't get it. I was like, I got a mosquito bite again.
Where?
Right here. Don't scratch it, baby.
Why not?
Because it's actually irritated. It's actually really bad to scratch it.
Sophia.
Oh my god.
I don't know these things.
You're supposed to know this.
I just know to scratch it. Yeah. You draw.
I should drop or something?
It's what?
It's irritating.
Do you want me to lick it?
No, no.
It might help.
Everyone who's here for the Haunted District Tour, guys around, please. If you have not checked in yet, please do. But my name is Connor. There's also Casey, Cheyenne, and Scott. You'll see them later on the tour here. Just going to establish a few quick ground rules before we start anything. Firstly, no smoking on the premises, vaping, or any of the sort. If you do get caught doing that, we will ask you politely to leave. Photos are highly encouraged here. More importantly, there is a lot of uneven ground here at the fort, a lot of dark areas, so please be careful where you step. And at the end of our tour, we will have an optional 5 minutes where you can spend down in the casemate cellar, where we will shut off the lights and you can take pictures, spend down there just to kind of hang out.
Do it then.
But with that, if you'd like to follow me, I'll take you out to our parade grounds here and
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Where did everybody go?
I know, yeah.
Oh, this is so cool. Oh, you could be in the stockade. Military crypt. The wooden one. Historical.
So, as I said, welcome to Fort William Henry and our Haunted History Tour. I would just like to quick ask if anybody's been here before, recently, anything like that? You've been here before? Okay. How long ago? Last year we were here. Okay, yes, fairly recently. Well, of course, part of the being a good paranormal investigator is to understand the history of the place that you're investigating. And Fort William Henry is a place that can be best described with a lot of trauma and drama, per se. Trauma being a lot of the death that has happened here, and drama being a lot of some of the intrigue between the French and the natives, which we'll go into in just a moment here. Now, starting out, this fort was built in 1755. Now, the fort you see here is not the original fort. This is a reproduction that was made in the 1950s by local businessmen in Lake George. But the fort was built by Sir William Johnson after the Battle of Lake George. If you've ever been to Battlefield Park, you can learn all about that and some of the more inner details, or come here during the day tour and they will be happy to tell you all about it. Nonetheless, this fort stood for only 3 years. It was attacked by one General Montcalm with his troops of 8,000, including 28 different tribes of Native Americans that had come on the conquest to fight the British. The French, of course, tempted the natives into fighting with, well, none other than the spoils of war, scalps, prisoners, weaponry, anything that they could take off the British backs. In particular, scalps was the big one. Scalps were paid for by the French £5 a piece. Now, of course, nowadays, £5 sounds pretty cheap, but during the time, accounting for inflation, today's money, it would probably be about $100,000 per scalp. It's certainly a heck of a lot of blood money for doing it, but the Native Americans, they believed that it was a great honor to scalp an individual because you can't exactly go up to someone and ask politely to take their head off. So it's kind of a little bit difficult. You have to be up in their face and you have to cut it away. So they saw it as a great honor because it proved your strength in battle. Nonetheless, the siege had lasted for 6 days here at Fort William Henry. The British had in total about 2,400 troops, 500 stationed in the fort with another, give or take, 1,500 outside in Battlefield Park at another camp. The French, of course, sailed across down from Lake Champlain, coming down into Lake George and landing in modern Lake George Village and entrenching themselves, holding this place to siege. Montcalm expected that this place would fall within about a day. He instead got a siege that lasted far longer than that because Lieutenant Colonel Monroe was one stubborn man. He would not let this place fall until every last man had died for it. Through the fighting, eventually when it had ceased with an explosion in the Northwest Bastion, which we'll learn more about later in the tour, Montcalm saw that the British fought quite well in battle, and as such gave them a generous... It's going to be doing great. Continuing on, Montcalm gave the British a generous offer where they could walk away with their lives, their rucksacks, being their bags that they had for general belongings, and their weapons as well as a spray can. The only thing that they could not bring with them was ammunition and gunpowder and food because the French were going through a famine at the time in Canada. So as such, the British happily accepted that. But there was one large critical issue that had seemed to elude the French, and that was the Native Americans. Because the Native Americans, of course, had traveled from far away, all the way as far as Montana and northern Maine. So they were coming from a long distance, and they were sending their men and their troops. They took much of the brunt of the damage during the fight, so of course they wanted their reward. The only problem was the French did not give them their reward. Instead, they were packing up and they were getting ready to leave, letting the British march down to the stronghold, Fort Edward, 16 miles down the old military road. So, of course, as many people would likely be if they had worked for a month, had left their families with nothing to return with, they would get pretty frustrated. And to say the least, in their frustration, they would begin what was known as the Massacre of Fort William Henry, beginning by going down into the casemates and going after the wounded. In particular, it didn't matter if you were French, British, man, child, woman. It did not matter if you were down there, you would have been in their way and would have faced the brunt of their anger. But then they felt that it was just not enough. So they would then continue in stripping the British as they marched their way back to Fort Edward until eventually massacring them and putting their march to rout, where the British had to run with their tail between their legs back to Fort Edward. Now, of course, this was a lose-lose for everyone involved because the British, of course, had lost their fort, a very strategic point here on the end of Lake George. More importantly, they had had their relations worsen with Native American tribes, and they would use this massacre in future to further fire up the Provisional in fighting the French and their native allies. The French, of course, lost their allies because they betrayed the natives, and as such, they would not fight for the French again. The French also had put in a fair bit of resources into fighting this battle, and losing this much, it made to be a bad deal. And of course, the Native Americans, they lost their European allies, and they had been betrayed by the French. So as such, where was I? Give me a a second. Completely scrambled my brain. Yes, lose for everyone. Nonetheless, the shorthand of it is that everybody lost in terms of this battle. The English would, of course, retreat back to Fort Edward, and this fort would be destroyed, being left as charred remains. Now, when this fort was built as a reconstruction, this area was not excavated very well. So 1/3 of this fort was excavated, and the archaeologists that dug it out predicted that what we stand on may likely be 200 so bodies, if not more, on these bloodstained lands. That's part of the trauma here at Fort William Henry, the drama being the betrayal that the French made. Well, with that, whenever you're all ready, I can take you along, and you guys can turn around if you'd like, and we can check out the military crypt.
If everybody just wants to gather around here, actually.
Got a candle.
This room was excavated with the 1/3 of the fort that was excavated. We're not too sure if they called it a crypt, but we called it a crypt because of what was found down there. This room was just off of the military hospital. We found 5 bodies. One was missing a head, and one was missing a leg. There were a few extra legs down there. The head we have 2 theories about, and the leg is the most easiest to explain, so I'm going to do that first. If you were to get shot with a musket ball, the musket ball would shatter your bone, and they did not have the technology to find it, so they just cut it off. They just cut your leg off, and because they didn't want you to get gangrene, and gangrene is a disease that rot from the inside out, and you'll smell it before you can even see it. Now about that head, the French, they traveled with their priests, and it was written in a priest's journal that a Huron warrior came out of the crypt with a severed head, and he held it high above his head with the blood running down his arm. And he showed it to the priest, and the priest was obviously disturbed. And the warrior, he was very, very proud of his prize. And then he retreated back, and he retreated into the wilderness, never to be seen again. Has anybody watched Ghost Hunters or Taps? Yes, good. They were here, not in 2012, and we have their video playing in our gift shop. And they had their camera facing the picture of the bones down there. We just have a picture. We don't have the bones on display anymore. We used to up until the late 80s when a law was passed that we could not display them. They got a proper burial. And then there was this red, in the middle of the night, their camera was moved with a red swoosh. And none of them were around in here, and there was nobody there, and it was 3 in the morning. So they're coming back early. They're coming back in November, December to figure out what happened there. Now we do have another ghost story that happened in broad daylight. This was about 20 or so years ago. There was this family visiting the fort, a mom, dad, and their little girl, and they decided to save the crypt for last. So they the mother and father went down into the crypt. The little girl was following them, and she stopped dead in her tracks on the first step. And she had a look of complete terror on her face. And the other guides, they came down to try to get her to go down. Her parents were trying to get her to go down. And the guides, they're dressed in the British regalia, so they're wearing 3 layers of red wool with a tricorn hat. And the little girl refused to go down. She was terrified to go down. And the father said, "It's just a picture. There's nothing down here." And she said, "I don't like the man standing behind you with the ground beef face. He's scary." And the father looked around, and there was nobody there. So obviously the parents thought it was a military crypt. They thought it was one of the reenactors dressed up to scare them. So they got mad that that someone scared their daughter. So they took her with